Hello, everybody. Welcome to this very first webinar for our upcoming Footwearize event, which is going to happen in December. So my name's Nico. I am the founder of Footwearology. Many of you will already know me from a lot of previous webinars and events that we're organizing. I would like to introduce you to the different guests that we have today. I will do them in order of how I see them on my screen. So there's Daniel Petcu. I think he's one of the big pioneers in the orthopedic footwear industry when it comes to generative design. And I think he's going to blow people's minds today on how far you can already go with generative design in the orthopedic industry. Then we have Matthias Heubinger, one of the founders and CEO of ShapeDiver, and he is actually my collaborator in this webinar. This is the first time that we are doing a collaborative webinar together with another company. So that's ShapeDiver. He will explain a little bit further on what it is exactly that they do, because I think this is going to be very relevant to all of you that want to do something in generative design. Then we have Peter Davis, for many of you who are in computational design, a very well-known figure. He is, how would I say correctly, I think, Peter, head of innovation for the Biome Research Lab.
It's a small team. It's a small team. I can't say head. It's just like 5 people. So
okay.
A collective, yeah.
Collective, but indeed one of the absolute big brains behind the system that you guys have set up for indeed making shoes. One of the things fully without glass is not the only thing, obviously, that you do, but that's the reason why we're talking about today. And then, of course, also definitely known with the audience, Cornelius Schmitt, founder and CEO of Zellerfeld, and indeed proudly showing the print farm in the back. So what I'm going to do first is to talk a little bit about Footwearize in general, and then we'll get into the webinar. So let me share my screen. Hold on a second. Find my PowerPoint here. So, and let me know if you guys can see this. So when we started this webinar, we knew that there would be a lot of attention, but we did not know that how much attention there would be. There's more than 600 people that have registered. We know they're not going to all be joining live, but there will be many. I see, Naveed, you're raising your hand. What I wanted to ask of everybody is if you have a question, please, if you can keep your questions to, you can type all your questions in, and you can also vote for other people's questions, but we'll answer the questions at the end because we have actually a lot of stuff to cover today. And I'm afraid that if we don't have the digital whip, as we discussed with each other, we're not going to be in time. So today, what we're first going to do is the following. Oh, I see a lot of people now raising their hand, but I'm not sure if this is people. If you wouldn't mind typing in the chat if anything is wrong, because I see people raising their hand, but I'm not able to see if that is a question or anything else. Like I said, there's people who are only seeing a black screen. Oh, you cannot see me, or you cannot see. Okay. Let me see. How is that for the other panelists? Are you not seeing me either, or?
I see what you're sharing, the screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I also see it on my side, and then let me double check also if it's visible in the live stream. So I can see it. Yeah, in Zoom, everybody can see definitely. Oh, screen is back. Okay, sometimes what can happen also, guys, with a live stream is that the stream can be a bit slow. So for all of you, and if you're watching both, I would definitely say jump into the Zoom, because that one also always is perfect. Okay, in Zoom, usually this works. So what I wanted to talk about quickly is what are we going to do today? So first of all, we are going to do a little introduction on what is the webinar about, what is Footwearize. Then we are going to get into a couple of use cases. So for everybody to understand what it is that we are talking about today, because there were a lot of questions already before with people that wanted to know, but is this only for printing or also for other things? It's definitely for all kinds of footwear making, but we will show you 3 different use cases so that we kind of set the stage then for a discussion. I'll have some questions for the speakers, and then at the end we will do the Q&A, because otherwise we might get interrupted with a lot of questions that will be answered. So as I said, this is the first webinar that is for Footwearize, which is our annual event. This will take place this year on December 4 and 5. This is when we have our main event, but by now it has turned into a very large footwear innovation festival. This year, it's going to take place in Alicante. As some of you might have heard, we announced it also online, we are moving by the end of this month to Alicante to be closer to a lot of shoe industry, to really work with factories that are there. So this is the format that we have now, a super beautiful new location for the event. This is going to be in Ciudad de la Luz, which is right outside of Alicante. We will take people there by bus. This is a fantastic area where they shoot action movies. So this is actually quite a nice place. It's all at the sea. We can have more people here, both in terms of visitors as well as exhibitors. And not only that, the first day, so December 1 to 3, we are doing a whole wide variety of factory visits. So people interested in that come earlier. And then apart from that, the week after, we will have a bunch of masterclasses and workshops, because of course, if we bring so many experts in from around the world, and I will announce a bunch of speakers in the coming weeks, literally from as far as Australia, if we bring all these people in, then of course we want to make sure that they can also teach and give some master classes. So this is going to happen the week after. Now this year we have a theme for Footwearize, which we didn't have before. Before we just did like all general overview of innovation. But since this is our 3rd time, we want to specialize a little bit more. And it's essentially about fusing fit, feel, and fabrication. So how can we basically use data to blur the lines between the orthopedic industry, the fashion industry, and the sports footwear industry? And that's also why we have these different guests here today, each from a very different angle of the footwear industry, but still working along those same lines based upon data. So day 1, we're going to talk indeed about the fit and feel part of this, and indeed a lot of data, a lot of biomechanics. How can we get this done? What are the hurdles that we're facing? And day 2, we're going to be very pragmatic on that's all very nice, but how do we actually manufacture that? And especially also local for local, whether this is in Europe or in other areas. What I'm not going to do today in the webinar is to go really in depth into all the technical details of how you work with those data and how you program that. You will see some demos in the use cases, but we only have 1 hour, and we know we have a very broad audience, not just people from generative, from computational design, but also people from the orthopedic industry, people more broadly interested. So we are going to approach the webinar a little bit more from an overarching bigger view. But then if you want to go more in depth, we have a fantastic digital goodie bag. And I am going to post actually right now the link in the chat. And this is where you guys can, here we go. And I'll repeat that again also at the end of the webinar. This is where you guys can download a lot of, I call it extra brain food. So it's a fantastic report from Volumental on digital last making and grading. There are several discount vouchers from the participants here, from the speakers, for different generators, for discount, of course, from my side for Footwearize, different fantastic discount from ShapeDiver. So look at all that. This is the real goodie bag, and we'll keep adding actually in the coming days some extra stuff to that. So this link is particularly for the people that are actually in the webinar now. So that's an extra advantage that you guys have to join live. So setting the stage for this discussion about lasts, because as soon as you start challenging it, I know there's people who are going to be very irritated or almost feel attacked. But then again, when we look at this, more step by step, Obviously, everybody also knows there are great disadvantages also when it comes to last, because they have a lot of limitations. Obviously, it's an extra cost factor. So if we don't have to make a last, if we have a method of make where we don't need it, great. Designers usually are not able to make lasts, a very specific knowledge, and that also creates kind of a disconnect sometimes between different parts of the industry, and also the fact that we're losing a lot of knowledge because it's a kind of dying out profession in a way. So I also have it a lot as an educator myself, that I'm being asked by companies, please train my people in how to work with proper fit with lasts. A lot of lasts are also derived from existing lasts, and it means that we're kind of losing the skill to make them from scratch, but also it means that if there's a mistake in a last, it also kind of trickles down all the way. What a lot of people often don't want to admit is, but I find a really important one, lasts limit sizing options drastically. So whenever I, for instance, now work with a customer who wants to make shoes for women that are short, have a very short, have a very tiny shoe size, when you come to a factory, first thing is, yeah, but we need to make all these lasts, which we don't have. It's all expensive. We don't want to do that. So that doesn't serve the customer very well. So apart from length, also just having it custom to your foot. A lot of lasts can be based upon outdated fit data. And the shape often, I mean, that's why I have one here. Shape of a last largely is dictated not just by the foot, but by how we make shoes, or how we made, I must say, shoes in the past. Because obviously your foot is not flat like that and does not have a sharp angle like that. So it's not necessarily so that it's always best for the foot. That's why we see now such a surge in anatomical last. Then in a traditional construction, the whole last that dictates also the outside silhouette of the shoe. We will see with some of the speakers, indeed, with printing, this can be different. But that means that in traditional shoe construction, you have very limited options, especially if your foot is not the average shape. And then lastly, I don't know if any of you have been in last making factories, but it's a subtractive and not additive manufacturing method. So there's waste. You start from this huge block and you grind it down in multitude of steps to this. And even though you can say, yes, it's recyclable, it's also all waste that we don't necessarily need. Not to say that all constructions can do completely without lasts, but it's not something that we necessarily need. And if we can find a better solution, by all means, I think we should do so. Having said that, I want to give the floor to the speakers. I will stop sharing a second, and actually want to start with you, Cornelius, because I think you are probably closest maybe to the current state where you have a combination of the way we do sizing now and the way how I know you would also like to do sizing in the future. So maybe you want to kick it off and explain how Zellerfeld uses or does not use lasts.
Sure, yes. Thanks, Nico. Thanks for the beautiful introduction. I can't wait to be with you in Alicante this year.
Yeah.
To your point, or like maybe to start, in case anyone or not everyone is familiar with Zellerfeld. So Zellerfeld, like you see all those beautiful printers here in my background. Those are 200 printers, and we love keeping them busy of printing shoes all in one piece construction. And you can see that roughly here, like a boot, or you might have seen also those Nikes we have been printing at ComplexCon last year, and we are really eager to get printed shoes on every foot. I think this is what people most know of us. We always scream printed shoes on every foot. That's what we want to achieve. Yeah. And we obviously we're not just saying that out of nowhere. We fully believe in printed footwear because it is a manufacturing method where every shoe can be different, and where every shoe can be, no, it doesn't necessarily need to be made in a way that we are making 8 billion different feet. We are pressing into one specific last shape. Yeah. I'm sure Peter will be saying a lot as well on how you can use a foot as a foundation and not a last. And I totally believe in that. I totally believe in this future. However, we at Zellerfeld are also a little bit on the intersection of those things. Like we work with brands like Louis Vuitton or Moncler or Nike or many, many different, and also with thousands of small independent labels and brands and creators, you could say. And so what we are spending most of our time with when we think about lasts and digital shapes is about how can we find one common denominator that works for kind of everyone, so that we can build kind of an operating system for footwear which works for kind of everyone. On the one hand, the consumer that treats them better than currently last shapes are treating them, and on the other hand, also designers that are also that can be very specific when it comes to, oh, I don't want my design to be distorted. I don't want my shoes to look like a foot. And we also had that, I remember from the earliest days, we were sending out shoes to people that were really beautifully made to their foot. And then they were telling us, yeah, well, that's great that they fit, but I look like a clown. And I have experienced this the hard way, where I often had to see, okay, it's often also about what you usually don't necessarily want, kind of a compromise. You want to have a shoe that fits much better than any conventional shoe, but then also doesn't necessarily look bad. And that's a very interesting intersection. Nonetheless, we are also, when we look into our last digital last library. So when I talk about last, like at least you can say we are getting rid of them in the physical sense.
Yes.
And when you work with Zellerfeld, you still work with them in a digital sense. And we have built up a family where our main focus was on, how can I say? Give me a second.
Sure.
When we think of Zellerfeld and the consumer end, what is most important to us is basically figuring out how everyone likes their shoes, every consumer likes their shoes, which means when you give us feedback to the shoe that you just bought on Zellerfeld.com, we want you, no matter what shoe type you chose, no matter if it's a boot, no matter if it's a slide, if you give us feedback to whatever you bought, we want that feedback be usable for all the other styles as well that you might buy after. So to us, really important when we build a last family, as we call it, like it's basically, it's very similar, very easy to compare last between the different styles. So that when you buy a boot, and you say, oh man, I would like my next shoe to be a little bit tighter, that we can then extract that feedback and apply it to the slide. That is basically what we are really interested in, because also what we found is scanning is not necessarily the full thing. I mean, you can have a beautiful scan, but then also there is a massive range in subjective feeling of every wearer. So what we found out is sometimes it doesn't crazily matter if the first shoe we send out to the consumer is a standard size or a custom fitted one based on a scan. As long as you have that one feedback loop, that is what is really interesting, because with that one feedback loop, you also understand how they like their shoes. And I saw when I went through the members list here in the chat, I saw Ales from Volumental being here, and he has a beautiful chart. I didn't bring it today, but he has a beautiful chart where he shows of different foot lengths, the different, like, I don't know, there's a range of almost 30 to 40 millimeters and all like in length. So I don't know, maybe 4 sizes in difference. And all of those people buy the same shoe. Just absurd. And that's basically what we are trying to put into what we are doing when we think of it. It's not just a scan, it's also, okay, how can you use fit feedback data, translate that into the next version's fit on top of hopefully a scan.
So that you get basically for each customer like a personal fit profile, right? That is activated when they buy.
And that's basically what we believe a heavy lock-in from the consumer end will happen. I mean, I love Spotify, I love using YouTube.
Yeah.
my YouTube page looks completely different than yours because you have different preferences when it comes to your content than I have. And
Yeah.
that's why I love my YouTube, you love YouTube, YouTube. I think that's very similar here. And that's what we are trying to figure out.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I think one person's YouTube that will indeed also look different from both you and I is Daniel's YouTube, Daniel Petcu. Because I think he can also explain, I think it's a really beautiful bridge also because I know what you're going to be showing, Daniel. Also indeed showing how with 3D printing, you have so many more options actually to make that shoe look very different from the outside versus the inside. So I'd love to switch now to your workflow, which is interestingly enough, not all that different from Zellerfeld's, even though you do that specifically for medical footwear for orthopedics.
Hello to everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to be in this webinar. So here I would like to just 1 second because I would like to share the screen. Okay, so here I would like to challenge you. I hope it is visible, this image. Okay, so I would like to challenge you to redefine footwear at a level of thinking and divide it in 3 elements: the interior, the facade, and the structure. For sure, the structure will not be limited just at the midsole, but also at the entire footwear. So the problem of shoe last, it is better seen in dysfunctional teams, because when you have all need, you have a good shoe last designer, and I want to say hello to Eric Hondenbrink. I saw he's here. It is from my side one of the best last maker designer. But when you are depending by somebody who has to give you the last, or much more worse than that, when you are rely on your own manual skills to sculpt a last, you will understand better the limitation of the last. So in my model, which I have developed related to medical footwear, which is focused on individual, not on the mass product. Here it is the problem of transferring the input data, which be all kind of data which are useful for designing a shoe, towards a virtual shoe. Of course, in my initial model, between the input data and the virtual shoe, it was the shoe last, which after I have discovered the printing, I have started to delete from my thinking. So here the question which I would like to be a challenge for you is how will we transfer the data, whatever means this data, anthropometrical data, biomechanical data, I don't know, computational data, aesthetical data, directly into the footwear, into the, I would say, the interior of the footwear. And I think there could be 2 strategies. One is building this virtual shoe around a foot's volume, represented by the foot scan. The second will be to build this virtual shoe through transforming a foot scan. My option was to design these virtual shoes, imagine like a DNA of the shoes, from which, with some modification, you can obtain what type of shoe you are interested in it. So my option was to build this virtual shoe around a foot volume. And here I would like to show you, I have applied this thinking for the moment to foot orthotics. I hope you can see. Okay, So here I have worked in the last month as a first step at a configurator for foot orthotics. And if at general fairs, you will see that foot orthotics are generally flat. This is the beauty of orthopedics because not all the feet are flat. Not all the foot orthotics are flat. So we have to have the flexibility given by parametric design and parametric tools like Grasshopper and ShapeDiver to be able to build our virtual product, in this case, foot orthotics, around the shape of the scan. So here will be very easily to build, to modify the virtual foot orthotics around the foot scan. The same idea is to build the footwear directly around the foot scan, or even around some foot dimensions. Of course, when it is about difficult morphology, like in the case of the orthopedic footwear, it will be difficult just to work with dimension. We will need some feet shape in order to be able to be much more close to the foot surface. Okay, so here you can see that thanks to the parametric design and to this fantastic tool, we can build around the shape of the foot. Of course, here I prefer to make this transformation by hand because it was easier to me to think at some specific task. But this is another advantage of parametric design and of these wonderful tools, that you can then add to any of these points. You can add function which will be able to automatize the process. So from my point of view, I think we with 3D printing are in the posture to transfer the data directly to footwear design, to footwear structure, without even thinking at I'm not speaking about physical last, not even thinking at a virtual last. How will we transfer the data which we have directly to the footwear is depending by the strategy we like and we are accustomed with. What I want to say regarding these wonderful tools, from my point of view, Grasshopper mainly, is that you don't even need to be, let's say, a very specialized. I don't have knowledge regarding coding. So it was very easy for me with Grasshopper and ShapeDiver, not only to build this parametric model, but also to put it online, and in this way to have the feedback from potential users in order to develop in the editor.
Yeah,
So
thank you
from
so
my
much.
point of view, don't forget just about physical last. Try to forget also about virtual last, at least with the
Yeah, so
individual.
that's an interesting view, because in your viewpoint, you basically go around the last completely. You don't think in lasts at all from the approach that you do.
Yes.
Might not have been clear to the audience that indeed the way you make that configurator was actually with the help of ShapeDiver, the software that we're getting into now, that Matthias will explain us a bit about. So Because I think a lot of you who know Grasshopper are like, where did that whole algorithm that I know go? And that's indeed behind that interface. So Matthias, do you want to jump in and tell everybody a little bit about ShapeDiver and how that is essential? And then after that, we'll jump into Peter, because then it's also a bit clearer how they were able to make this workflow at Vivo.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nico, for doing this together. It's amazing to have all of these experts here and share their workflows. So just a little caveat, I'm definitely the least qualified person in this webinar to talk about footwear. So I'm not going to attempt to teach you anything about that. But I have spent most of my career working with CAD software and parametric design software in particular. So maybe I'll take the role of kind of introducing a little bit these concepts, specifically the concept of parametric modeling and Grasshopper, which has been mentioned a couple of times now. And I think this is relevant to the conversation because essentially it's being used in different ways by all of the other speakers in this webinar. Maybe just a very, very little intro here, parametric modeling. Why is it relevant? Well, I mean, not knowing much about footwear, I did understand that discussion is about going from a physical last or a digital last to some other way of designing your footwear. And so we have to replace the last with something. And this thing is typically, as Cornelius has also mentioned before, right? Something we know about the customer. It may be physical information about their feet, like a scan. It may be design preferences, fit preferences, things like this. So essentially, we need to design the footwear in a way where each new customer who comes in with a set of data, which we call parameters, and then we have to have a way of coming up with a great shoe for them. And parametric modeling is the way to do it. It is a way of designing with unknown parameters in mind. And Grasshopper is a tool to do that. There is many other tools as well, but there is a reason why essentially all of the other speakers here chose to do this with Grasshopper in various ways. So let's talk about Grasshopper for a second. Grasshopper is a parametric design tool. You are all familiar with CAD tools, of course, where you design something manually with Autodesk or Rhino or other tools. And instead of doing that directly, in parametric modeling and in Grasshopper, you basically put stuff on a canvas, and these components that you see, they're either geometrical operations or they're parameters. So in this simple example here, you have one parameter, which is a number, and then you have some geometrical operation, and basically you create a box. Now, this is extremely simple, of course. It can turn much, much more complex very, very quickly. But again, don't be intimidated by what you see on the screen. It's just a lot. But as Daniel has said before, you can do this without learning to code. And I think this is a crucial thing here, because all of you have lots and lots of knowledge about footwear, and maybe not all of you want to learn to code to build applications like this. So there is a learning curve to Grasshopper, but you can do it without really learning a programming language. You can get started by just putting a couple of components on a screen. So, and what's also important to note here is on the left side, you have parameters, and the parameters in Grasshopper can be numbers, they can be text, but they can be anything else. The input can be an image, the input can be a scan of a foot, like in Peter's case, we'll see in a second. It can be basically all kinds of information that you have about your customer. And on the other side, the outputs can be data used to print shoes, it can be data used to print documentation, it can be Excel sheets, it can be all kind of data you want to produce that is relevant to your production process. And now this is where I'm switching a little bit from Grasshopper to what we do in our company. Grasshopper is fantastic. That's why everyone's using it. But if you want to use Grasshopper files in a professional production cycle, ideally in an automated production cycle, you have some difficulties. One of them is Grasshopper runs in a CAD software. Not everyone has CAD software, and especially your customers probably don't have CAD software installed. It's not that specific one. And so if you want to have them interact with your tool, you need to find some way of sharing the tool with them, and that's really difficult to do with a Grasshopper file. Especially also, even if you work with collaborators and you send them a Grasshopper file, essentially you send them your whole IP. So all of your methods, in Pete's case, there's patents involved and all kinds of things, right? If you send the Grasshopper file to someone else, you send your entire IP. So that's another reason why this is probably not ideal. It's like you send the source code of your application. if you use a programming language. And this is essentially where ShapeDiver comes in. So what we built is a platform, an online platform that allows you to upload your Grasshopper files, and then you get an application, basically immediately without doing anything else. So you upload your file, you still have your preview like you had in Rhino and in Grasshopper, but in the browser, and you get all the parameters you define in a Grasshopper file also on screen, and you can send this link to your grandma or to your friends or your collaborators or your customers, right? So this is just a screencast from our platform. This looks nice, but of course it's not really, like basically this internal mode, the pro mode that Daniel uses, it's not really geared towards consumers yet, but with a little bit of magic, it can easily turn into something like this. This is a project we're working for on. I told you I'm not going to tell you about footwear. I don't know much about it, but this is a jewelry example. And what you see on screen has been entirely done with Grasshopper without any additional programming, right? This is including the user interface, all the geometry, all of that comes purely from Grasshopper in combination with ShapeDiver's platform. Yeah, so all of this is possible if you want to get into Grasshopper by just connecting to a platform and using it. And this is just the last example. Daniel has basically already shown you some of this. With our tools, you not only have the ability to just show sliders and buttons and drop downs to have your customer interact with your design, you can actually let them draw on the screen. You can let them select stuff. You can get them, show them different options depending on what they selected. So essentially, we've created this framework that lets you share your parametric design with your customers. And we hope that this is going to be helpful to the speakers, but maybe many of you as well, in thinking about how to automate some of the work that you do and how to get to custom footwear in an efficient and scalable way. And with that, I think we're going to switch to Pete, who's going to share some of the magic that he does with our tools.
Yes, indeed. We'll jump to Pete, because I think that people also have the picture of course, there's a lot of very high level computational design behind all of the different models that we're showing today. But then your software shows how you can actually make that consumer facing or business to business, or how people can actually use that outside of the company. That's obviously also what Vivo is aiming to do. So Pete, take it away.
Yeah, cool, thanks. I think I sit right on the other end of the spectrum, which is like no last at all. So it's like, what would an alien do if they were going to design feet? I kind of say this saying at the top nearly every presentation, but it's perfect for innovation. So the electric light bulb did not come from continuous improvement of candles. So in this case, the last would be the candle. So we need a whole new system in order to make a foot-centric workflow. Bottom left is kind of like Vivo's hierarchy, which is material hardware synergy first, software, then design. If we talk about lasts, that hierarchy is usually backwards. So you design around the last, and then you're hitting siloed walls with humans, like machinists the whole time, or material scientists, and then your design intent usually gets completely changed by that iteration. But if you describe your material and hardware synergy correctly and have a software environment, which is what we've built, then the design actually changes for those parameters. We had to redefine the 3 sections, so I'll go over these 3 sections in the short talk. But first, you've got like a shoe-shaped problem. So top left, you can see how naked it is and how your foot is like compromised by lasts. Even if you just sit within a range, you're going to be crushing in or out. A selection of like bad feet, very bad feet. They've all got problems with them. Top right, our scanning partner, Volumental. This is just one size, but you can see kind of what Cornelius was talking about earlier about the breadth of sizes, just even in one size. And this bottom right is me and my boss, Asher, fitting into some very famous lasts. So effectively, red would be outside the last. So this is kind of like how we're doing. We don't use any last for this whole kind of process. We take your scan, we parse it, which is kind of like cleaning up the data so we can work with it. We use loads of machine learning methods in order to landscape 43 points. And this is quite interesting, especially for like prior art with patterns. We're not just doing length and width and let's say like 3-4 values. We're doing 48, which combines into the next step, which is deform. And we take your scan, we actually deform it. So we're not doing a global offset of, let's say, 3 millimeters. And if it's a hard-coded number like 3 millimeters, it wouldn't work for a child's foot, or let's say for an adult's foot that's really wide. It has to be like a fluid variable that we carry across. So a lot of it is percentage driven by distilling loads of biomechanic knowledge into how we actually deform the foot. And it's very visible with that toe line. But we're also going in and out in order to do that. Then from deform, we go to inform. So because the points that we capture are so accurate, we're actually able to inform what's inside the foot. And that leads into some design changes, especially with the tabby that you'll see later on. Last step is to wrap. So all of that stage is leading to this wrapping section, where we use a physics engine in order to wrap something around your foot. It actually came from dressing my daughter's foot with a sock. And I quickly realized that the sock is just a cylinder. And what's a cylinder? It's just a rectangle. And if you have that, you can start to use that for the basis of putting something onto the foot. Bottom left, you're seeing a very nice GIF that we have on our website as well. But that is the landscape section working on different feet. Again, the front, so that's really redefining footwear and kind of building a system or an architecture away from last, so fully foot-centric. The next would be democratizing design. So our partnership with ShapeDiver is like second to none. We need a stable front-end system for Industry 4.0 products. So using all of the stuff on the back end for redefining footwear, we're able to have a front end that you can interact with all of these variables like Matthias was talking about, and really democratize the process down. So like my daughter, who's really young, can start working on it, or anybody can interact with these tools. I'm always saying that nobody can do 3D, but everybody can do 2D. So all of our footwear is created just from images, and we use those images in order to seed DNAs, almost like what Daniel was talking about. DNAs for tread, DNAs for design structures and guidelines, and we kind of work in abstracts the whole time. So anybody that's keen-eyed in the top left image will also see that the inside this nest of stuff, there's also a last in the top right. So not only does it work on child's feet all the way to adults, no sizing, by a click of a button, you can go to all lasts. And this was really important for kind of like how we structured our whole business model, because we wanted to feed into the main business and affect their workflows as well as just an innovation project. Bottom left, you've kind of got the tabbies, which have just come out last week. Feel free to go buy them. A pioneer project in the middle, and the monos, which will come out later in the year. And Ash's feet looking lovely in the bottom right. So manufacturing, and this is a big hurdle which a lot of people fall over, but if you're going to get to a good bottom line for costing, especially with a custom product, you need to have full control over how you actually produce your part. And you could almost argue that the last is the root of all of that system for manufacturing. So usually if you go to a machinist with a variable of like a custom foot, they don't like it. Machinists like consistent variables, which would be lasts the whole time. So as soon as you send custom geometry to them, it just throws off the whole workflow. So we really took that on our side to kind of write our own native code that we can feed to all of these systems in the center. Nico, when we were talking about this talk that we're going to give, she quickly realized, oh, you could do some die cuts, or you could affect the upper. It's completely correct. Like the top right image, because it's a rectangle, unveil a rectangle, subdivide it. You've got loads of little squares. Once you've got loads of little squares, they're pixels, and they drive the knitting machines. Robotics, we can go to mold production, SLS, DLP, you name it. Everything's a point and a vector. As soon as you understand that everything's a point and a vector, then you can start to really manipulate native machine code. Cool. So I'm really happy with this guy. If you don't know the guy on the right hand side, Ross Edgley, he's been on. Does a really good Joe Rogan podcast. He's really pushing his health to the max. So he's a big advocate of what we're doing, even in foot health, and he's definitely loving them. And this is great feedback, just initially from him. But this project now is live. Feel free to go buy them. I think that's me. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Peter. Yeah, that I especially that part, as you know, about the native machine code makes me really happy, because this is indeed one of the things that most people were asking me when I announced this webinar, like, oh yeah, all very nice, but this is only if you make fully printed footwear. And indeed, like you just demonstrated, I fully disagree. Actually, you could do this with leather cutting. You could do this with many other ways of making. You also see, by the way, that when we're looking at innovation in methods of make, that they're all kind of intertwined with this, because whether we're looking at knitting, we had the people from Variant in our last Footwearize event that make software that would basically connect directly to what you've been doing. We could see, well, let's take the on-running light spray where you are spraying in layers. All these things are directly connected to the same method of data collection and then transferring this into a manufacturing process. And for those processes, we might also not necessarily need the exact same types of lasts that we have now. For the shoes that are not printed, are you guys using lasts, and are they any different from regular? Is there any developments that you have there?
Yeah, there's loads of biomechanists in Vivo that inform custom lasts that are built.
Yeah.
And that their knowledge was completely invaluable for this project, because really what we're doing is we're distilling knowledge down into zeros and ones. So I shall say that workflow as well is completely automated. So the client will interact with it and it will go directly to the printer. There's no kind of like slicing. There's no kind of tweaking of code. So that's really important. But we wanted to your question, we wanted to make it interchangeable. So we can go directly to a last and start producing molds from there and affect the main business. But what's more important, all of the data we capture, anybody that's into that, or especially machine learning, will understand the richness of what we're capturing. Yeah. And that goes into effectively switching around and making lasts again. So all of this data that we capture and we pass, and it's very clean and under our control, then we can take all of that, create averages, and then create better lasts. And that's already happened. There's a lot of tools that we've actually built with ShapeDiver. So democratizing all of the computation to last people that make lasts, and start to analyze them as well. So we can take the data that we capture from the foot scans, translate it into lasts, match it against each other, come out with loads of numerical numbers, and then inform better decisions. Some really nice stories from that in the past.
That also with the feedback loop that Cornelius was talking about, where you gather then the feedback from the consumer on how they feel it fits, and use that also eventually.
Sure. I mean, the thing is there's a million variables that you can add in. So we've got pressure map data, we've got scan data, we've got biomechanic data, but the list is infinite. One thing that was definitely important for us when we're building it is being super accurate, and that is perception of comfort. Usually we find if your shoes are not fitting correctly, it's because the accuracy of the system is not correct. So we were incredibly accurate. That's one reason why we chose Volumental. And the points that we reference and how we deform your foot in order to fit the product gets you to the right fitting like a glove, like Ross actually was saying in that video. So sometimes it's a custom enough workflow that will actually create like problems for comfort. Also, it's interesting because we're reaching a point where these products, Industry 4.0 products, are not normal, So people don't really know the right kind of lexicon or language, or like they haven't really experienced actual custom fitting footwear on their shoes. So they might be used to very tight footwear. We find this from our female pioneers, because usually females wear very tight fitting shoes and they're used to a tight fitting foot in comparison to males. So it's a muddy area, but like what we were very conscious about doing is creating a coding architecture that was incredibly stable, so we could add in like all of these different variables. So there's nothing to say that we can't do that in the future.
Yeah. Anybody else, anything else of the speakers to add on what type of data could we include? Because now, of course, we've talked about a lot of things that you can measure mathematically in terms of there's a scan, pressure scan, sizing, but I could also imagine indeed all kinds of preferences. I already see in the questions from the audience that we'll get to in a bit, that there's also great questions about data, about the foot as such, the haptic data of how will a foot deform when it enters a shoe. Anybody, anything to add there on types of data that you would like to have maybe, or that you feel should also belong in this list?
Yes.
Daniel.
I would like to understand how aesthetical or how the aesthetics can be
Predicted.
transferred into data.
Yeah.
And I know, for example, there are differences in orthopedic footwear. If you are looking, there are some areas close to the foot surface unmodified, while in the normal last production, the shape of the last is different in order to bring some aesthetic of the final products. I would like to understand how aesthetics is transferred into data.
I'm very happy that you say that, because I'm actually working on a webinar where basically a panel for Footwearize, where I want to bring in computational psychologists. Because many people might know that I used to be a trend forecaster. I am a very big proponent of saying you can also predict and calculate aesthetics in a certain way. It's actually not illogical. We already have, of course, a lot of apps for e-commerce where people swipe for footwear, and an AI, for instance, starts to understand your aesthetic preferences from silhouette, color, material, etc., and starts feeding you more of what you might like. But I think there's way more I think that we can do, also way smarter, where a lot of times now when people speak of custom footwear, they want to have that consumer design that shoe, but they're usually not designers. So it might not be that they come up with the best shape that they would really like. And I think we can actually, from a data perspective, do way more there, bringing in also all kinds of aesthetic data, also looking at the different AIs now that are scraping social media for visual data. A completely different question relating to something that Cornelius had said, and maybe so he also wants to answer something about this. So essentially now when we're talking about data, those people that have the data can kind of lock in their consumers with this system. That's also why you were talking about that feedback loop. You want to have that, the preferences. How do you look at that with Zellerfeld in the future in terms of creating that system?
Good question. I mean, I still believe, like, so when we started Zellerfeld, we wanted to build something for ourselves first. It didn't start as a business. It started out as pure passion project. And when I still look at the day and age that we are living in, I think it's incredible that you still go into shoe stores and you have like maybe a variety of 100 designs and they all kind of don't fit. I believe, and I mean, like Volumental is helping a lot there, but I believe the system of how to buy shoes in itself is also very flawed. So when I think, I love how Pete was phrasing this. If aliens had to rebuild everything from scratch again, then I believe what should be there is this one platform, or like this one fit data, so to speak, that every consumer on Earth has. And on that data set is how they like their shoes. Obviously, the scan is really important. All sorts of different things are on there. And based on that, then it would be great if whatever shoe design could be made for that foot. And I believe that would be the ultimate play in footwear. That would be where I would personally buy all of my shoes. Because if I have a place to go where no matter what design I choose, I know it's going to fit, I will never go into a shoe store anymore.
Yeah.
And that is, I believe, what we are both, Pete and I, for certain, are trying to build. Pete for sure, or the Vivo gang, a lot with barefoot shoes, which is an incredible, loyal, and amazing space. And we are also still a little bit more in the fashion space, I would say. And but I think in general that is the holy grail. And I think in this future, there will be no shoe brand that is just trying to push everyone into the same shoe last. And I think you're right. The data will be a very important component in it. That will be probably the lock-in. I'm also very interested to see if it's not maybe like a Vivo or a Zellerfeld.com. Maybe it's a third-party provider like a Volumental that has the data that is being able to be shared between all the different services. I think it's gonna be a very interesting time for sure. But nonetheless, I think no matter if you buy a barefoot shoe from Vivo or a boot from us, I think in the end, whatever you choose, you will probably be locked in forever. I cannot imagine that you will that you will still go into a shoe store and buy a shoe that doesn't fit for you, or that doesn't fit you. I see it on myself. I've been wearing now custom fitted shoes for years, and I sometimes just out of fun, because I don't know how it feels anymore. I put on a standard shoe that was my favorite, most comfortable shoe before, and I can't do it anymore. And and you don't feel it so much in the first time you put on a custom fitted shoe. But if you've been wearing for a week a custom fitted shoe and then you go back, you're like, how could I have ever worn this? And
I would jump in there and say it's exactly the same story for us with barefoot. Obviously, people it has like a bit of a cult following, barefoot, and once you even just try like a normal barefoot shoe and then go back to, let's say, like a dress shoe or hiking boots or something, you really feel it. Exactly what you're saying, Cornelius. But we have something that we built into our architecture as well that was incredibly important is a health system to calculate like how your foot amends over time. So let's say if you're going to get scanned and then get rescanned, you'll see how the difference is between your foot, because you're making your foot stronger by wearing barefoot shoes. So effectively, your toes are splaying more, your arches are getting stronger. And this feeds into exactly what Cornelius is saying. Anybody that has all of that data under their control is able to dictate it to the customer in a really palatable way, because that lexicon is not like defined yet. And that will create homogeny within the footwear industry. And then you'll see one kind of place. I can imagine where all that stuff goes. But the health aspect of like what is happening to your foot and how your shoes are mending to that are like incredibly important. Just feeds into more comfort. That's a variable that we can add in as well.
And I believe also in the future we will actually have those discussions. I believe Pete and I will be the first ones where I really believe the more of those shoes are out in the market, I think people will be soon I don't know. I could see people saying, how can you still go into a shoe store and buy those standard sizes? Aren't you worried you will have back pain when you're old? And all of those things I think will happen exactly like Peter says.
You're looking at serving from cradle to grave, essentially.
Yeah, and also there, Daniel, probably that is the gold rush for guys like Daniel, because then it's about, okay, how can you build orthopedics into the shoes and make them change with every shoe that they buy after. It's like, I always see it like braces. When I was a teenager, I had braces, and every couple of weeks I had to get them a little bit tighter. And why would that be different here? If you need orthopedic correction with every shoe, after a couple of months, you just make the correction a little bit more, like Peter is saying, like how it's amending. And I think that there's no way that this is not going to be the future.
This is one of the reasons for which I didn't include foot orthosis in the structure of the footwear, because an independent foot orthosis will let you to make some changes. On the other hand, we have a comment here that from Diana Palin, which said fit isn't subjective. And if I understand well, I will say I can't agree with this. I think fit in a high proportion, it is subjective.
No, I think it's really interesting. Sorry to interrupt you there, Daniel, because I would also like to ask Diana Palin. If you're not following her, please do so. As one of the most well-known podiatrists and foot experts that we know in the world from Australia. She was also actually visiting us for previous Footwearize. I think I understand what she means, because indeed she argues that if you understand the foot from a podiatry perspective, you could basically predict why that person would prefer the shoes fitting in a way. I think there's value in that. From my experience, I would say it might be half of the story, because I've also worked with people around the world, and say if you have people from a different culture where, for instance, they kick off the shoe at the door in Asia, for instance, these people like to wear their shoes larger anyway, because you don't want to have this tight fitting shoe that you have to pull off your foot. So there's a lot of cultural preferences. We've worked a lot with people that have different different foot shape, that then get like a shoe custom made, and they find it horribly uncomfortable because they thought it would fit different. But I see you raise a hand, Matthias. Do you have a
I just want to make a kind of a little snarky comment, I guess, from the software guy following the discussion. And I really find this fascinating, because I know that, of course, all of you guys put a lot of effort into all the intelligent ways to interpret the foot data and make custom footwear from it. Like very, very different approaches to it, but in the end, there's a lot of IP and a lot of thought going into that. But it sounds to me like what would be great if it could emerge is some kind of a standard format, or like open source format for information about feet and design and preferences and things like this. Because then, from the view of a customer, I could avoid scanning my feet 35 times for all the different producers and brands. Because what I want to do is I want to go somewhere, scan my feet once, take this set of data that's in a standardized format, and then I give it to Pete, and he interprets it and makes perfect barefoot shoes. And I give it to Cornelius, and he makes me the best Nike I could possibly buy anywhere, right?
Yeah, and that argues again maybe for like what Cornelius was saying before. Maybe it's going to be a third party like a Volumental that has the data, which I do think is also probably part of their strategy. And also, Alice, I know you're here, so maybe you want time for comment.
In the software, all the time, right? You have Apple and Nvidia and all these companies cooperating on defining a format, and I think that would be a great thing to happen here.
Yeah. I want to get to some of the audience questions, because there are some really good questions. I want to first get to, I will just do them in order that I think they're very interesting. Sorry for that. I want to first get to Yenqing Chen. I hope that I pronounced it well. I know she's a researcher and professor, and she definitely has some really excellent questions. So I'm going to do all three. She starts with, what does it mean to build a last family based on real population that varies among the globe and is based on so many demographic factors? How could we build a last family there? Maybe Pete, that's something for you, or Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not into the market of building lasts. I mean, I have done it heavily in the past, but like I said in the presentation, if you know anything about machine learning and the data that we're capturing, you can see the richness of what we're doing and translating that into lasts. That's already happened at Vivo, so we're making more accurate lasts. I mean, you were kind of saying it earlier about different cultures and demographics and how you have that. And I'll second what Matthias is saying from a software developing side. It's just if statements, it's just like variables and stuff.
Large models, and then we will have to figure out probably over time the different weighing factors of how essential something is. That can relate also to her second question about the idea of the feedback loop. What should be asked to consumers to generate the stats and data effectively about that feedback loop? What do we want to know from people? Cornelius, is there anything we ask? Are things you were already asking, Vivo?
Yeah, I mean, we ran 3 pioneer projects in order to kind of try and understand that. We're kind of a weird intersection with kind of like industry 4.0 products. So it's not even just footwear. There'll be like all of this stuff. A good analogy, and I said this to my parents the other day, would be you don't go to McDonald's anymore and go to the teller. You go to the screen, and their kind of whole industry 4.0 product is set up for you to interact with that custom product, and their logistics is set up for that. So it's not only footwear that has that problem, but it's sorry, my mind's gone off. I just started thinking about that.
On what you would want to ask in the feedback loop.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Sorry, pardon me. Yeah, but we had these pioneer projects where we tried to figure out that, and actually it's a really hard intersection point, because nobody really knows the kind of words to ask or like what the data does. A very good point that we had was kind of taking the scan and putting it into like one of our lasts. Some users thought that you had to match the last to their toe line, and some wanted to give it like, you know, way too much space. So it's just a case of kind of a lot of testing, you know, at this point, and then you start to come up with the wording, and then, like I said, there's probably going to be a homogeny with what Matthias was saying about creating consistency for all of this stuff, and then it will translate between people's. But it's a tough gig at the moment.
Yeah. I see again Diana commenting, if you understand feet, you don't need to ask anything. I think from a podiatry perspective, probably yes, but then you're getting to what would be in the eyes of a podiatrist, correct sizing for you. I've had that done many times, and I actually don't like, I mean, it will probably be correct, but it's not. I mean, I'm also somebody who likes to kick off their shoes. So it's also a lot of indeed cultural preferences, experience, etc. that we going to have to be able to try and factor in. And again, that can also very much change as we age, or as, like you said, you switch from regular footwear to barefoot footwear. Other really good question from Fangang. From the economic perspective, how can you achieve the marginal costs that equals the marginal revenue, since for customization, your fixed cost may be locked in, but to acquire each additional customer, how can you dramatically drop the variable cost so that the two curves will intersect? So essentially asking about how can we make customization work from a financial and profit perspective.
I can jump in. Cornelius, you probably definitely thought about this, right? But maybe I was kind of mentioning it before with some of the stuff that we had to redefine in the presentation. One of which is manufacturing for Industry 4.0. Again, it's what Matthias was saying about like this, you know, creating these like variables that are shared between people. But we really, you know, hit barriers with machinists the whole time, or print farms, or like even mold production, you know. So we had to like literally take all of that and plug it into our architecture and make native code. So a lot of the times, this is why you see like products going 200, you know, USD plus for customized products. That's because you're having to pay somebody to take that file, slice it, nest it, so on and so forth, or even make mold production, or even run the robotics. This is something we were completely conscious of for affecting our bottom line. Was again, scan to print, no humans. The client is the only person that interacts with it. So it gets sent via data centers, via APIs, directly into the printer, and it calculates all of the nesting and all kind of stuff like that. So affecting bottom line pushes us close to subtractive prices, and this is when it gets really, really, really interesting. And then this is when you see the switch for supply and demand come over. That's how we're doing it. It's by really having full granular control over the whole print bed, whether it's any kind of printer, robotics, or subtractive.
Do you think all the shoes, that's always my question related to that everything has to be one-on-one fully custom? Or could we say, for instance, if it's a knitted shoe, you have such a give in that shoe that you could also get to maybe many more or very different sizes than we would use now, based upon foot proportion, for instance, all the stuff also that Volumental works on, and not necessarily having to do full one-on-one customization.
I'll jump in quickly here, because that's exactly what we did with our first Pioneer project. So we didn't try and run before we could walk. So we took customized lasts driven from data, and then we manufactured these shoes. We gave them, these were like custom for the user. So it's what we like to call custom enough. And then we've gone to the full workflow, like you've seen on the presentation, with wrapping around. That's my take.
Yeah, exactly. I'm quickly scrolling through the questions because I know we're already a bit over time. So I want to maybe do one or two. If somebody really has a very urgent question, please type to me in the chat. Or if somebody's like, I really want to know this. I did also like another question from Yuanqing. The idea of design democratization is long presented, which I personally think not only requires the elevated algorithm-driven design thinking for designers, but more importantly, requires intelligent inputs, efforts, and certain design sensitivities for customers as well. Are we ready for this shift? So essentially, this would be indeed, like she says, an entirely different design process. Also, I mean, Cornelius, what do you think, for instance, of this one?
I
Or
think we fully
I know
are. I
people
think
have,
we're doing it every day.
yeah,
So
yeah.
every day we get new designs that launch, and on Thursday you will see a completely new website from us, by the
Yeah.
way, and it will be able. It really will be like the YouTube of shoes. You can just upload something and you can launch it within minutes. So yeah, that is a massive shift, and I think we're already there. I think we are already there that you can throw in any design that you did based on the guidelines and parameters of using one of those like last shapes, virtual lasts, you could call them still,
Yeah.
that are still highly customizable. And then you can have whatever design as a wide forefoot, a narrow heel, low instep, flat foot, whatever you want. And I think I think we are fully there. You might not be aware, whoever asked that question.
Yeah, I would almost jump in, and that's, again, we planned this whole structure for democratizing design, and it's one reason why we chose ShapeDiver to add accessibility not only to our designers, in-house external designers, but also our clients. So if you just think about like even just tread DNAs, so you can choose your design intent, whether it's like a tabby, for example, or like a mono, and you can flick between loads of different tread DNAs. And because of all of the procedural or parametric aspects to it, you can change all of the tread parameters if you want a shoe for, let's say, like hiking or for on-road. So it's that stuff, again, what Cornelius was saying, that stuff's there. The big problem is just kind of this tsunami of data, and you really have to kind of Appleize your product to be as simple as possible. You don't want to kind of overwhelm them. But what we've found is we have like advanced settings. So yeah, you can pick different designs, tinker around with some of them, choose your colors, choose the naming convention, choose the tread types. If you want to go into advanced settings, you can start deforming the foot and stuff like that. So it's a careful balance.
About, because I actually very much agree with her question, because I mean, now what we're talking, yes, it's coming, and then we're talking about the technical aspect, but we're also not talking about an aspect that she might mean, where it's when we're looking at design now, and also how a lot of designers are trained, and I know because I get so many of them here, it's very egocentric, let's say that. So this is my unique thing that I make, and my unique vision is the thing. And then indeed, okay, with Zellerfeld, I can then say, great, this is the thing that I want to have made. I upload it, it gets made. But then when it comes to the question of, okay, but now would it be possible that others, like consumers or other designers, interacted directly with that design that you just uploaded, whether this is for fit purposes, either aesthetic purposes, but like you say, I can choose from treads. But then it's also about, I think, defining like a framework within which the other people that collaborate on this shoe can take decisions, because how far can they then stretch it and how far not? Already having somebody else tweak your design, I think, is for a lot of designers already something that they are very afraid of to have to deal with.
True.
So I think it's also a mindset shift maybe already in education. So that's some, I'm very interested to in this particular topic. So there was one final question, because that's popped up on the chat of what people wanted to know. I'm sorry that we could not answer all questions. There are some questions more about the scanning method of Vivo, but I think a lot of people can hear all that in the webinar that we have also posted in the goodie bag. So is there a subjective and cultural component into fit? And do we know anything about it?
Yeah, I can definitely say yes. So we are all about localized production. So we're starting to sell. It's a UK-based company, so we're starting to sell there. That has its own kind of bias, and then we're branching out. And it's important that we have those machines for localized production and supply and demand. So there's no kind of shipping or anything with those aspects. And then you have to analyze that market. And again, it goes back to the question before. It's all just variables and if statements, and that stuff will be programmed in.
Yeah. Perfect. Anybody else has any final remarks before we close off? Because I think we can continue on and on. I know I will also have all of you in Footwearize. We're also now defining different topics for everybody to talk about. I think this is a really great kind of like preview, dipping our toes in. Oh, I see, Shafi. Interesting question. What happens if custom fails? Okay, final question then. What happens if custom fails? There, I think some of you will definitely have the experiences with people that don't like their custom shoe.
Well, it's factored into our business model. That's definitely for sure. That's the answer I can give.
Yeah.
Again, you know, we're like spearheading all of us on this call, are spearheading that kind of stuff. And again, it's like an emerging market, industry 4.0 products just in general, not even just footwear. So you know, that kind of linking, or I'm going to say homogeny again, but it's the best word to use. That homogeny hasn't really kind of like found its place yet. So
Yeah.
all of these products are still like work in progress.
Yeah.
But it's these kind of like mutual products that really define, you know, what is fit, what is fit, feel, function.
Yeah. But I think there's also some rules, maybe you know about that more, Cornelius, where if you make a custom shoe for somebody, do they then have the same right to send that back and be reimbursed if they don't like it, or how? Because it seems to me that also legally, but it will also be different from country to country, maybe.
Yeah,
how this works.
they don't have that right. However, if you are serious about what you're building, you would still give them the right.
Yeah, to just
so in our case, for example, our goal is 90% of the first shoe fits. I see Lewis is in here from our team, so that's kind of our goal, that as many as possible of the first shoe that we send out from a new customer, they fit. And if it doesn't, hey, then at least that needs to fit. And right now we are still young, and we are still VC funded, and we are still figuring things out. So we still figure this out. And in the worst case, we just send them until they're happy. We are not letting them go. If they once paid for a printed shoe, we will not let them go until they're happy. And so far, we believe that's the right approach. I don't know, every week there are a couple of calls where, I mean, we send out 100 pairs a day, 200 pairs a day. Soon now with the new farm, we are sending out 1,000 pairs a day. Yeah. And we still have some customers where they got the first shoe, didn't fully fit. Then they got the second shoe, didn't fully fit. Usually those are now the Brits and Germans, by the way. And then the third shoe, and when the second shoe doesn't fit, this is when we actually jump on a call with them, and we're like, hey, something's really wrong here. Let's jump on a call. And we actually jump on a call and we figure it out. And it's still where you most figure out most of those issues. Yeah, but it's very fulfilling to see, okay, you figured something new out, why it didn't fit, and maybe it was an edge case again, and then you implement that, and then all of a sudden you have less blueprints.
I will say as well, it's almost like how you dictate that to the customer. We found that an issue at the beginning, like even just like imagery, cross sections. You know, we create a blueprint, so anybody that does buy our tabby now comes with like these little mini feet of their feet as a key ring, and what we call a blueprint. So it's your feet with the tabby around, and loads of cross sections with loads of data that comes off it. So they're like more informed. But again, that is like, it's the beginning of this journey, you know, and how to actually dictate that perfectly. It's a tough one.
When if you allow me, when you are working with the individual feet, I think it's important. There are important two elements. One, if you have such kind of an online configurator to show and discuss with the individual the model, the design. And second, some elements like foot orthotics, which you can play with them in order to avoid some fitting problems. Next to, of course, the treatment.
Yep, exactly. Well, guys, I think that we had a really fantastic webinar here. I am also putting in again. Oh, I already see that Eric also posted it. Here's another link to the digital goodie bag for all of you who want to know more, want to be able to play around with ShapeDiver, because I think a lot of people in this webinar will want to. There's a great discount for those of you who want to come to Footwearize. If you now look into the digital goodie bag, you'll have a nice discount code that is valid for a month until we have the next webinar. And some of the topics that we have addressed now, for instance, about aesthetic data, I'm actually hoping to address then. So I will try also on LinkedIn to answer maybe some more of the questions that we didn't get to today, or pass some questions on. Matthias, you want to say a final word?
Yeah, no, just one sentence. I just wanted to say thank you to all the panelists. I learned a lot today. It's been really exciting, and especially because, you know, 3D printing and the combination of 3D printing and parametric design has been inspiring us from the very beginning of the founding of the company. So it's really exciting to see this. And I also wanted to mention to everyone who's really interested in talking to us, we're happy to talk to all of you, of course. This is a really exciting topic for us. So shapediver.com or contact@shapediver.com, drop us a note, and we're happy to jump on a call and discuss your topic.
Perfect.
Thanks,
Exactly. Thanks for everybody for joining. For many of you in the evening, I know indeed, like Dai was saying, people from Australia, 3 a.m. It shows how passionate people are about this subject. So we definitely have much more to talk about. And also for those of you who would like to rewatch or weren't able to watch all of it, both us and ShapeDiver are going to publish the full webinar on our YouTube channels. So that was also for the people that were not able to join. I already answered some of them personally, so that they can see the webinar also after. Yeah, okay. Well, wish you all a fantastic evening, day, morning, night, and see you in the next one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.